Whispers of the Autumn Wind. In the quiet town of Ashbourne, where maple leaves blushed golden every fall and the streets echoed with the laughter of generations, lived a young woman named Alara. She was the town's librarian, a gentle soul with hazel eyes, a heart full of poetry, and a habit of collecting forgotten letters from second-hand books. Across the town square, nestled between a cobbler's shop and an old bakery, stood a quaint antique store owned by a quiet man named Thomas. He was a former literature professor who had retreated from the bustling city after the loss of his fiancée 5 years earlier. He rarely spoke unless it was about books, and even then, only when necessary. The townsfolk said he smiled once every winter, if the snow was soft and the wind was calm. Their paths crossed only in glances. Alara would pass by his shop every morning, and Thomas would nod, always from behind the frosted window. They were strangers, bound by silence but connected through the presence of stories. One rainy afternoon, while organizing a stack of old books in the library, Alara stumbled upon a letter tucked inside a copy of Wuthering Heights. The letter was dated November 12, 1978, and was signed only with the initial T. It was a love letter, achingly poetic, raw, and filled with longing for someone who had left. Intrigued, Alara began collecting more forgotten letters from old books. Most were unsent or misplaced, but each one told a piece of a larger, unfinished tale. Every week, she posted one on the bulletin board near the library door with the hope that someone would recognize the handwriting, or perhaps, the emotion. One morning, Thomas came to the library, holding a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. He didn't say a word as he placed it on the counter, but Alara noticed a small slip of paper poking from between the pages. Curiosity won. After he left, she opened the book and found another letter, written in the same style as the one she had found before. The next time she passed by his shop, she stopped. With trembling fingers, she slid a letter of her own beneath the antique store's door. It was not a response, but an invitation. Some stories aren't meant to be read in silence. That evening, Thomas visited her at the library. They didn't speak for the first few minutes, just sat among the shelves, the flickering light casting warm shadows between them. Then, slowly, words began to pour. He told her about his fiancée, about the loneliness that came after, and how he had written letters to a future he never thought he'd have again. Alara listened, her heart echoing with the quiet ache of his confessions. She spoke of her childhood, her dreams, her love for forgotten things. They began to exchange letters, not hidden in books now, but handed directly, often sealed with pressed leaves or dried petals. Over the course of autumn, the letters turned into coffee dates, long walks through the falling leaves, and silent laughter shared in the warmth of the library's reading nook. Thomas began to smile more often. Alara began to read aloud, just for him. By winter, the townsfolk no longer saw Thomas only through a frosted window. They saw him walking hand in hand with Alara, her scarf tangled with his coat buttons, their eyes lit with a quiet love that didn't need grand declarations. Years later, after they were married, the library held a permanent exhibit titled Letters Between the Leaves. It featured the original notes they had exchanged, now yellowed and framed, a testament to how two people, once strangers, had found each other in the margins of forgotten stories. Whispers of the Autumn Wind. In a quiet village nestled among rolling hills and golden trees, lived a young woman named Alara. She was a painter, known for capturing the soul of nature with every brushstroke. Her home was a small cottage at the edge of the woods, where the autumn wind carried whispers through the rustling leaves and the scent of falling rain. Alara lived a peaceful life, though her heart held a quiet longing. Each of her paintings, though admired by many, held a subtle sadness, a reflection of the emptiness she often felt at dusk when the world turned amber and silent. One crisp morning, while she was painting near the river, a man appeared on the trail behind her. His name was Aidan, a writer from the city who had come to the countryside in search of inspiration. He had messy brown hair, thoughtful eyes, and a worn leather notebook always tucked under his arm. "Your paintings look like dreams," he said softly, careful not to startle her. Alara smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "And your notebook looks like it holds secrets." That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, they met by the river, under the same tree, every morning. She painted, he wrote. They shared stories, laughter, and moments of silence that felt like music. Their words began to appear in each other's art. His poems hinted at a girl with sunlight in her smile, and her landscape started to capture a figure sitting in the distance with a pen in hand. As October faded into November, the forest turned from gold to gray. One evening, Aidan invited Alara to his cottage to read her a story he'd written, their story. It was tender and filled with little details only she would recognize. She listened with her eyes closed, heart open. When he finished, he looked at her and asked, "Do you ever paint something and feel like it's the truest part of you?" She nodded. "Every time I paint you." They kissed beneath the soft flicker of candlelight, as the wind outside carried leaves in circles, like the way their souls had begun to dance. But love, like seasons, is sometimes tested. Aidan received an offer to publish his book in New York, a dream he had chased for years. It meant leaving the village, possibly forever. Alara supported him, even as her chest tightened with each goodbye they rehearsed. The night before he left, they sat by the river, where it had all begun. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "You won't," she whispered. "But you have to follow your dream. Just promise me you'll come back." "I'll return with the spring," he promised, holding her hand like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Winter came, and the village fell into silence. Alara painted every day, pouring her longing into every canvas. She wrote letters she never sent, listened to the wind, and waited. And then, just as the first blossoms kissed the trees in March, Aidan returned. He found her by the river again, paint-stained hands, eyes wide with surprise. "I told you," he said, grinning. "I'd return with the spring." Tears fell down her cheeks, not of sadness, but relief. She ran to him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him like the world had been holding its breath. They never parted again. Together, they opened a small art studio and bookstore. Alara's paintings hung on the walls, and Aidan's books lined the shelves. Visitors would often ask about the couple in the portraits and poems, the lovers who seemed too perfect to be real. But Alara and Aidan would only smile and say, "They're just whispers of the autumn wind."